So as you can see, it's not even possible to capture all of the work that has been happening in your communities. We've tried and we'll show these videos as we go forward, but I also hope you take a look at the National Youth Violence Prevention Update that's in your packet. We did our best to kind of cull through and pull out a lot of accomplishments of the communities that are here with us today and to try to recognize it, but we still have not been able to do it justice. But it's quite moving to know that despite the real challenges your communities face, you all are doing some incredible work. And so our theme for today is It Takes Everyone. And so you heard from federal leadership and the partnership at the federal level that is working to support efforts at the local. Now I have the privilege and the pleasure to introduce to you leadership that's key at the local level, and mayors in particular were the leaders that we knew had to buy into this from day one. On the national forum, we understood wholeheartedly that if there was going to be a comprehensive approach, it was going to be driven by leadership. And leadership starts with the mayor. And so for our first mayor to hear his perspective, and again, we did everyone a disservice. We gave no one enough time to talk about all that they do. And so right from the beginning, I know it was going to be tough when we made the ask of anybody, hey, tell us what you're doing in your city that's so wonderful and amazing. And you only got a few minutes to do it. So bear with us, but I think for this example that you saw in the video, San Jose was a city that showed a lot of communities the importance of governance. Having the Mayor's Gang Prevention Task Force in San Jose so well established, having now run for, I believe, some 25 years, and having leadership each time embrace it and take it to the next level. It is my privilege now to introduce to you the mayor who is coming to San Jose here, just taking office here in January of 2015, who has had a vision for the city that taken on the Mayor's Gang Prevention Task Force, taking it to another level, and also connecting that to my Brother's Keeper initiative. He is already come with the enthusiasm and the passion and the commitment to this work. And so I'm delighted for you all to come and hear him now as he comes up. Please welcome Sam Liccardo as he talks about some of the great work happening in the city of San Jose.
Thank you, Theron, and thank you to the entire Department of Justice team for inviting me to speak and inviting our delegation to join you. I also want to thank Secretary King for his eloquent words and for his service and leadership for our children. I am actually a former Department of Justice employee. Back in the 1990s, I was a federal prosecutor, prosecuting many felony jury trials in federal court. I can tell you it's a much better job trying to save kids than prosecute them. It's also refreshing speaking to an audience that isn't forced to listen to you by jury summons. But these days, of course, I have a different role, and the honor is serving as mayor of San Jose, the 10th largest city in the United States, and in the heart of Silicon Valley. And we have a wonderfully diverse city. Over 40% of our adults were born in a foreign country. Over half of our public school, high school students are Latino. And we are very proud of that diversity. While some are proposing building walls, we're working on building the most successful multicultural community in the planet. As you can see from the delegation we've brought us, we also have the nicest, friendliest, best-looking group of people in the country. But nonetheless, we have our share of challenges. We have a gang problem, like every big city. And a decade ago, in 2007, San Jose had the most sparsely staffed police department of any major city, with about 1,400 officers and a population of 1 million. And that was the good old days. Through budget cuts of the Great Recession and layoffs, hiring freezes, pension reform, political battles, San Jose lost over a third of its police force, over 500 police officers over the last decade. And those losses have exacted an incredible toll. Police response times have lagged. In many cases, officers cannot respond at all to calls of auto or home burglaries. The loss of officers has frightened and frustrated many of our residents. It's undermined officer morale, and it's certainly hampered our crime prevention efforts. So against this very gloomy backdrop, one might expect that San Jose has become a cauldron of crime. Except it hasn't. Not only hasn't it, but the violent crime rate actually dropped in San Jose over the last decade. Indeed, San Jose retains the lowest violent crime rate of any major American city. That's what I call the San Jose paradox. A city over 1 million people with fewer police officers per resident and declining, yet with the nation's lowest violent crime rate. How can this be, and how do we explain the San Jose paradox? I think we all know that explaining crime trends in any direction is notoriously difficult. And certainly one explanation, as I noted earlier, is that we have the nicest, friendliest people in the country, and that helps. But it seems to me that at least part of our success in mitigating violence has something to do with a model of collaboration among our police, our school districts, our county, our courts, the district attorney, nonprofit service providers, our faith-based community, city staff. This collaboration is known as the Mayor's Gang Prevention Task Force. And like all mayors, I'm accustomed to taking credit for the good work of others, but in this case, I actually inherited this multi-sector initiative from a predecessor, Mayor Susan Hammer, who, with a team of folks, including our current city manager, Norberta Duenas, launched it. And they did so to stem youth violence through a combination of prevention and intervention and suppression and reentry strategies and services. So here's the good news. The good news is that the old model is still effective, though it is still evolving. Last year, community-based organizations working under the Gang Task Force umbrella focused their services on over 3,700 youth, 80% of whom we categorize as very high risk. And we can see the immediate impact of their work through several key metrics. First, in education, of those 363 youth who were surveyed who reported not having attended school regularly in 2014, 61% came back to attend regularly in 2015. And we know that often in states like California, funding formulas depend on attendance, so we just increased revenues to our local schools by over $1.8 million. On drug use, of the 985 youth reported, self-reported using drugs in 2014, 60% stopped doing so the following year after engaging with our task force programs. Recidivism. In 2014, 73% of these youth had been reported being previously arrested. Yet after a year of engaging with service providers under the task force umbrella, only 8% of them suffered arrest. And finally, of course, and most critically, violence. Although violent crime has generally declined in San Jose since 2008, gang-related incidents and juvenile violence has declined even faster, a 66% drop between 2008 and 2015. And as we look at the various components of this model, we see ample examples of unique award-winning programs that have propelled the success of this collaborative from all of our partners. For example, our district attorney's office Parent Project engages moms and dads at the first sign of detectable trouble with their teens, helping them improve communication with their kids. The Clean Slate program finds youth seeking an escape from gang life, giving them free removal of tattoos conditioned on the youth's participation in a personal skills training and building program. Our gang task force staff teaches classes to elementary school parents to enable them to detect the first sign of their kids' gang involvement, giving parents a primer on gang attire, graffiti, and intervention strategies. Our Trauma to Triumph initiative seizes upon a young victim's first trip to the local hospital's trauma unit as a key moment of intervention for caring counselors to spur personal transformation. We launched our San Jose Works program just last year with the goal of helping kids in gang-impacted neighborhoods land their first jobs. This year, we'll be employing over 1,200 teens, giving them a path to building resumes rather than rap sheets, and much more. Thank you. And much more than a summer jobs program, San Jose Works also provides job coaching and counseling along with financial literacy classes before the teens receive their first paycheck. We've seen a flurry of evidence of the rapid feminization of violence and gang crime, and studies show that teen girls respond very differently to interventions than boys do. And so we've developed a menu of female-focused gang prevention programs. And finally, whether it's through tagging or spoken word, we know there is a strong desire among all of our teens for self-expression. And through our digital arts and Youth Voices program, we're engaging kids to acquire digital and production skills to channel their emotions in constructive and often inspiring ways. Now, of course, some of these models and programs are pretty familiar to many of you in your own communities, and they may become standard practice already for many of you. And if that's the case, that's good. And if not, we're happy to share our experiences. But in either case, we're seeing best practices scale nationally as a result of our collective efforts, like today's, to collaborate. We're increasingly seeing U.S. cities employ evidence-based practices, post-traumatic care, multidisciplinary intervention teams, various public health strategies. But regardless of the modality, the secret sauce of our success in San Jose in countering teen violence requires far more than just using the best program design. As our Parks and Recreation Director, Angel Rios, often reminds me, in the great battle over the hearts of our kids, technical prowess is no substitute for the power of authentic relationships. In San Jose, we have developed a consortium of relationships characterized by passion, resiliency, and a common commitment to disrupt patterns of poverty and violence. It has required a collective admission that none of us can tackle these problems alone. Our police department gave up decades ago on arresting their way out of a gang problem. We are better together. It requires active solicitation of input from our community. It requires routine convening to foster communication across the many silos. It requires a powerful moment when a caring, skillful adult manages to reach to a teenager drowning in a sea of anger, depression, fear, or addiction. That, after all, is the most critical of relationships. All of these relationships are essential. And of course, we still have plenty of challenges. Like many cities nationally, we are experiencing a worrisome spike this year in recent months in crime, violent crime, I should say. This requires us to question and take a fresh look at our current approach. And we're working with the Office of Juvenile Justice Programs to launch a system improvement project in the months ahead. We appreciate their support. We'll need the power partnership to tackle the next frontier for improving our approach to reducing youth violence. In my view, that next frontier is data. Increasingly, technology enables us to obtain real-time data from sensors connected through the Internet of Things, probing everything from energy consumption to heart rates to particulate emissions and traffic volumes. Yet no technological gizmo enables connected infrastructure to our youth. Legal and political barriers, some understandable and some bureaucratic, prevent the exchange of real-time information about a youth's arrest, a dirty drug test, his absence from class, or his first signs of depression. So we resigned ourselves to accepting less reliable or relevant data, such as youth self-reports, or program participation rates, or subjective observations from service providers, as proxies for the real information about whether or not we're actually having impact. As a result, counselors and juvenile probation officers lack the information needed to help a teen in distress. Service providers lack the feedback they need to improve their programs or to substantiate grant applications to funders, and policymakers lack pertinent data to guide sound decision-making. Some metropolitan areas have begun to make progress on breaking down these silos to better share data across systems. And in San Jose, we're working on it. We're working to develop a shared MIS among essential partners, juvenile probation, school districts, social service providers, to share data that can bolster case management and program evaluation. But ultimately, we're going to need help from the state legislatures and perhaps even the national legislature. And we're going to need to lean on the creativity of people in this room, forging a path through all of our common obstacles in our own metropolitan areas. Which brings me back to relationships. We are collectively blessed to benefit from this circle of leadership that is widening by the year. From cities throughout the country, and within my own region of the Bay Area, for example, I'm blessed to have a visionary colleague in Mayor Libby Schaaf, from whom you're about to hear very shortly, and I'll leave you next to her capable hands. But working together, I'm confident we can get to our kids before the gangs do. And together, we can save lives and leave them a legacy of a safer future. Thank you.
I just love it when those things come together and you can see right from the get-go why mayors are so important to this work. Now, to shift gears a little bit, rather than focus solely on the national forum, we also want to talk about community-based violence prevention. And so our next mayor from Oakland, Libby Schaaf, will talk to you about some of the great work that's happening in Oakland. And again, she has been a fierce advocate and a champion. She has spoken to us before. Glad to have her back again. Please welcome Mayor Libby Schaaf.
Good morning. Let me see if this works. Where do I point it? Yay! So I was asked to talk about multi-sector approaches. And in Oakland, we just finished our comprehensive community safety plan. And like Sam, I have been the mayor for a little less than a year and a half. But that was the first thing that we did, was pull together these different sectors, including community leaders, to try and articulate what do we mean by holistic community safety. And like Sam, I also stood on the shoulders of some great work that predated me. And I just want the team from Oakland to stand up and wave, because if you have, Peter, get up, everyone, come on, Javier. The whole team. Because if you've got questions about anything that I'm talking about, you really should flag them down, okay? Let's just be clear about that. Through this comprehensive plan, we came up with 3 pillars: thriving youth and families, safe neighborhoods, and restorative city. And I don't have time to tell you all the different strategies that we committed ourselves to through this plan. I'm going to just highlight a few of them that I think are particularly good examples of multi-sector approaches. So thriving youth and families. One of the new things that Oakland has launched this year is my personal passion. It's called the Oakland Promise. And why is this so important? My 9th grade class right now, only 10% of them will have a college degree by the time they're 23 years old. And I mean a 2-year or a 4-year college degree. And in this economy, that is not acceptable. But the idea that we are not instilling the hope, the high expectations, that dream of a great future in our children from birth, I believe is part of the safety issue in our city. And so Oakland Promise is a cradle to career initiative. And I'm sorry, this busy slide, it's really a bad slide, but it's intended to show you that we are adding 4 new things to the continuum of how we meet those major milestones that we know are so important to that life course success work. But that we recognize that these 4 new initiatives are necessary but not sufficient to do what we need to do. But the idea of Oakland Promise is that we as a community can provide every child, with the expectations, the resources, and the skills to succeed not just in finishing high school, but to succeed in finishing college prepared for the career of their choice. And so the first new strategy that we are going to be doing in Oakland, and I love this, it's very multi-sector, is something called My Brilliant Baby. We will be providing babies who are born into poverty with $500 college savings accounts at birth. We'll be providing their parents, 60% of whom are single mothers, with financial coaching and a direct savings account for their personal use of $500 to also help ease their financial stress and to give them a sense of agency over their financial future. And we are rolling that out in partnership with our county health department and their home visit program. So again, a multi-sector approach. We know that when a child has even less than $500 in a college savings account, they are 3 times more likely to go to college and 4 times more likely to finish college. We also know that when the first child in a family goes to college, every young person, the siblings, the nieces and nephews, they become 3 times more likely to go to college themselves. This is a life changer, but that idea of those expectations being set from birth, the idea that we are saying to families that your entire community is investing in your brilliant baby, I think sends the most powerful message ever. But we're not done. This is just the start. In kindergarten, we are going to be providing every child, regardless of income, a $100 college savings account. And it's designed so that if family and friends contribute their own money on top of that $100, it is matched by philanthropy 2 to 1. In middle schools, we'll be establishing future centers, physical resource centers, where children and families can develop college and career plans. They get their transcripts audited to make sure that they're on track for college eligibility. And they have the process of selection, application, and financing of post-secondary educational options demystified. And then finally, college scholarships and completion support. We are providing significant scholarships to our students, up to $4,000 a year every year they're in college. So that's a total of $16,000 towards college, or $2,000 a year for community college, plus a bonus if they transfer into a 4-year college. But so much more important than the money. Our kids need more than financial support to finish college. We know that low-income kids that go to college, only 20% of them ever finish. And so we are providing one-on-one mentors and establishing peer support groups at the colleges so that our kids also have the social and emotional support to finish college. That is the Oakland Promise. It is big, bold, audacious, and I have raised $27 million so far for this initiative. And I want you to know only 5.5 of that is from the public sector. The rest of that has been from philanthropy, companies. They actually like things that are crazy and big like this, okay? It gets them excited. So don't be afraid. Go big or go home. That's what we're like in Oakland. So that's the Oakland Promise, very exciting, and that's part of our new initiative. And we believe that in 10 years, we will triple the number of Oakland kids who graduate from college. The second pillar of our comprehensive plan is safe neighborhoods. That's more of the law enforcement focused type of strategies, but because we are holistic, all of our law enforcement strategies are integrated with community-based organizations, with prevention and intervention. And the strategy I wanted to highlight is our Juvenile Justice Center wraparound program. We have, and again, through our generous federal grant, been able to station a coordinator in our juvenile hall. It used to be that when a child was released from juvenile hall, it would take, on average, 30 days before they were re-enrolled in school. And then the chances of them staying in school once they got back in was very small. Because through our federal grant, we're able to have a coordinator at the hall, and then we're able to have case managers that provide support to the child once they are back in school. We now have just 3 days between release from the hall and re-enrollment in school. 3 days. The retention in school has been terrific, and look at the reduction in the recidivism rate. That is phenomenal, and that just shows that getting kids right back into school and supporting them once they're there is making a tremendous difference. All right, and then our third pillar is what we call restorative city. And this is more a philosophy. This is the idea that we recognize that we have to approach everything we do with a sense of healing. Healing. You know, this is our commitment to not only restorative justice, but trauma-informed care, the recognition that children are meeting us with a long history that needs to be addressed. Ooh, I passed through it, but one of the strategies we've been doing is Peace in the Parks. It's featured a little bit in a video that you'll see later. Another one is restorative justice for Oakland youth. Restorative justice is obviously an ancient practice from Africa, from Aboriginal cultures, but we like to think its kind of embracing in America really did start in Oakland. We now have restorative justice programs in every public school. It has literally been embraced and held up by our school leadership, and the councils and the level of leadership that the youth themselves provide in the circles is fantastic. I personally, during my first 100 days as mayor, sat in circle with 100 young people in my city. And I encourage any of you with RJ programs in your cities to suggest to your mayor that they do the same. It's a very good experience and frankly important for the young people in your city to actually feel heard by the leadership. And then another spotlight I wanted to pick up on is our school-based health clinics. Again, this is really, you know, my staff said, Mayor, why are you including this? Because the city isn't really involved with this. This is really a partnership between our school district and our county health department. We have been able to utilize state funds for mental health so that we have mental health services right in the school site. But I wanted to highlight this as a strategy because it truly is multi-sector. It's taking advantage of the county public health resources, of state funding. It's putting it right into the schools. And as the mayor of the city, I know how important this is for the well-being of my families. And that's why I personally went with the superintendent to Kaiser Permanente to ask them for a grant to support this great work. They gave us $16 million. And so I'm trying to give you, like, you know, ideas of when you go back to your cities and you tell your mayor, I got all these great ideas of how you can help my work. You know, having the mayor walk in with that type of fundraising ask, it helps. It helps. So that's another idea. All right, I want to end on this issue of My Brother's Keeper. We also had the great experience this year of developing our plan for MBK. And, you know, the thing about Oakland, if there's a best practice, we're doing it. We have every program, we have every initiative. I mean, literally, I get frustrated because people are like, oh, you're trying this, you're trying this. I'm like, yes, we're trying that. And yet, I certainly am not satisfied that we are moving the needle the way that we need to for our children. And so one of the things we did through the planning process with My Brother's Keeper is ask, what are some of our overarching recommendations? What is next for us? You know, we're doing all these programs. Certainly we need to bring them to scale. We need to strengthen their fidelity. And we also came up with these 3 things. First, data. And I really cannot add to Sam Liccardo's really articulate description about why data is so important and why that is part of our next frontier. I want to also share with you, speaking of the importance of data, Oakland just completed a 2-year research project with Stanford University, Dr. Jennifer Eberhardt, on implicit or unconscious bias in policing. It is a really powerful study, and it reveals what I'm sure many of us have known for a very long time, which is that there are racially based disparate treatment by law enforcement. But the good news is we know how to fix it. There are 50 things that report recommends that our police department do, many of which we have already started on, that we believe can change that trajectory of unfair results. But it was the data that not only demonstrated it, but gave us the path for fixing it. The second is sustainable, impactful collaboration. One of the things we're doing this year in Oakland is really trying to beef up our collective impact work. We are trying to strengthen our joint powers authority that we have in our city, which is between the city, the county, and the school district, and ensure that that becomes the collective impact backbone for all of the great work that is being done to support children, because we know that when we leverage our resources together, we can do so much more. And then finally, systems change. And that is the thought I'd like to leave you with before. You know, as leaders, it is time that we face the really hard truth that racism and inequity are baked into the systems. And I would guess that there is no one in this room that came to work in public service to perpetuate unfair systems. We all have come to government with great intentions and with beautiful visions of a just society in our minds. But we are working within systems that were designed to preserve the status quo. And that status quo has been inequitable. And so the next piece of work for us is to not just think about rooting out the racists, individuals within these systems, but it is to question the systems themselves, the unintended consequences. The unintended consequences of doing things the way we've always done them. The fact that well-intentioned people are perpetuating these unfair results. So that is the work ahead. I can tell you that we in Oakland are very, very committed to do it. Thank you so much.
So again, I want to offer thanks to Mayor Schaaf and to Mayor Liccardo. I know you all are extremely busy, but it was so important, I think, for people to hear how leadership matters. And what you all are doing both in San Jose and Oakland is fantastic. You now have examples right there of what we mean when we talk about the importance of local leadership and a number of strategies that they're pushing in their communities. Now, you have to know that when we did this agenda, we've done this plenty of times before, so don't worry about time. We have the buffers baked in. I know all of you all. I've never known us to run extremely well on time. There's always a lot to say in the conversation. You are going to have 15 minutes. Don't worry, that break is coming. I do want to point out to you, though, that I am told that there is a backdrop out in the hallway for people to take things. Again, I don't know about these things, but to take selfies, to post pictures, Instagram, use the social media. Those things are out there and available. So you'll have 15 minutes. We'll come back at 10:45 to start the next part of our program. But please give a warm round applause for our speakers, our mayors, and folks, and yourselves. We'll see you back at 10:45. Thank you.